Cook.
Good afternoon and welcome to Politics and the Pulpits here on your hometown station, 98.1 FM and AM 1220. This is your holy host, the Bishop of Santa Clarita, back for another opportunity to talk about the two things we're not supposed to talk about in public: religion and politics. For those of you that are weather buffs, you're going to love the weather for the next 5 days. It's going to be over 100 degrees here in Southern California. Obviously, for those of you that are hunters, last Sunday morning was the dove opener. I unfortunately did not get to go out. However, I was worshiping my Lord and Savior, preaching God's Word, and enjoying every moment of that. But I did meet some guys the last couple of days that went out on Sunday and Monday and actually did not do very well. So I'm kind of glad that I did not get out there. However, I've got another week and a half of the season left, so who knows, maybe I'll have an opportunity to get out there to shoot those types of the Holy Spirit dove. Real quickly, this coming Sunday, September 8th, over at Bridgeport Elementary in the parking lot right off of Newhall Ranch is our third Trump parade, or if you will, car parade, truck parade, if you will. And Cindy Jostin and several of us will be out there. We always start with the word of prayer, the Pledge of Allegiance, and of course the Star-Spangled Banner, our national anthem. So I'd encourage you to come out and show your support for the 45th and perhaps, Lord willing, the 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. Well, we've got a lot of stuff to talk about today, and joining me to talk about those things is no stranger to politics and the pulpit. Jennifer Oliver O'Connell is an investigative journalist. She's a contributor to Red State, and we're actually going to highlight one of her Red State articles today. She also writes for 1819 News, and also visit and join her Substack As the Girl Turns. Jennifer, how are you doing today?
I'm doing okay, Pastor Jerry. How are you doing?
Well, I just know that there was a shooting in Georgia. Trump drops an ad on Kamala, and Kamala is still running away from her record of the last 4 years. Other than that, everything's fine.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's quite. It's never a dull moment in this election, which for someone who writes politically is great for my coverage and pocketbook, but not so great for the American people. I think their heads are spinning, and they're just not sure what to think.
Real quickly, let's talk just briefly. I don't have all the information in front of me, but obviously there was a shooting in Georgia this morning just outside of Atlanta, about an hour or so outside of Atlanta. And I think there were 4 people killed and several were injured and in the hospital. As of right now, no motive. Obviously, the gunman did not wear a red MAGA hat, so that means that there definitely wasn't a motive. So what are your thoughts of what's going on down there in Georgia? And obviously, that's a state that both the Trump campaign and the Harris campaign have to win.
Yes, most definitely. And Kamala Harris was, I forget where, somewhere, I think New Hampshire speaking, and immediately pivoted in an unscripted moment, pivoted to gun control.
Yeah. Isn't it? It's unfortunate that they always have to politicize these moments, right?
Right. It's just like, just say, we're sorry to, for this, pray everybody's okay. Thoughts and prayers is better than the politicization of it. It just gets weary.
Absolutely.
That they keep doing this.
You just mentioned something rather intriguing that I didn't think about, but you just mentioned that Kamala was up in New Hampshire. Last poll I saw, she was up by 7 or 8. Why is she in New Hampshire?
Good question, because Trump did pretty well in New Hampshire. I think the prediction from a lot of the pollsters and other analysts is that she's trying to pick up those Nikki Haley votes that, Trump couldn't get because, Nikki won in New Hampshire. So, she's trying to latch on to those. But I suspect that the polls are inflated and that she is just, she thought she had an advantage and she does not. And she's trying not to pull a Hillary by making sure she covers her bases.
Yeah. Want to quickly pivot to your new article that you just published today Merrick Garland delivers ominous remarks on election interference. And what's interesting is I was listening to, I guess NPR this morning, which was my fault, I guess, and then they obviously took the Merrick Garland remarks live, and that's when I texted you. But obviously, it looks like just 2 months before the election and almost a little over a week before before the debate, and you can start early voting in places like Pennsylvania. They have dropped this bombshell of Russia, Russia, Russia. It's the same old playbook. They did it in 2016. They did it in 2020. They're going to try to resurrect it now in 2024. What are your thoughts? And tell folks about what your article is all about here on Red State.
The article basically covers his speech and also points out that, as you said, they've done this before. Why are they doing it again? Why do I think they're doing it again? And the fact that he has so much fire for we must, protect election officials who are being threatened. Some of these cases I kind of wonder, but I'm not going to say someone wasn't threatened or not because we don't know. But he has great fire for that, yet prisoners January 6th, people who weren't even in the Capitol, are in prison.
Yeah.
The pro-life centers and churches were vandalized in 2022 after the Dobbs decision. No smoke or fire for that. People lost their lives and businesses in 2020 during the Summer of Love. Still stuff that's under investigation. And then suddenly it's like, election interference. We have to prosecute these people. You cannot threaten anyone. And, what galled me particularly was him saying that, the Department of Justice will vociferously defend your ability to, peacefully protest. And it's just like, oh, please, are you kidding? Relentlessly protect the rights of all Americans to peacefully express their opinion, beliefs, and ideas. And the J6 prisoners would really like a word on that.
Yeah, the other thing that I find intriguing about what Merrick Garland said this morning was, without saying Trump's name, which of course every one of them wanted to say it, they kept saying Russia's preferred candidate.
Yeah.
And of course, we all know what the inference is there. That is Trump. And what's funny is somebody was telling me the other day, just off the record, we were talking, and I was trying to say, hey, listen, when Trump was president, Russia did not invade. Then as soon as Trump is out of office, Russia invades. And then they use that as, well, the reason why Putin didn't invade is because, he's in Trump's back pocket and all that kind of stuff. So really, we think that it works one way. They think it works the other way. And here we are 2 months before an election, Jennifer, and we're supposed to be subject again to Russia. It's exhausting.
It's very exhausting, and that's why I said, the American people are just kind of like, can we just get this over with? That's the sentiment that, I get from the average Joe on the ground, that can we just get this over with? This is getting to be ridiculous. Can we just have a debate? Can we just weigh you two out at the same time? And they are deliberately muddying the waters. It's like, was it necessary to bring out this press conference at this particular time? No. It's a deliberate playing in the pool and giving people head fakes. So those who were vociferously Trump-Russia collusion, they'll have more red meat to get stupid again. And the people who recognized that this was a hoax and found the coverage and realized that they're head faking us again are just pissed off. Yeah. And then you got the people in between who don't even know what's going on.
Yeah, these are the same people that, were trying to convince us that there's a PP tape out there and that, the Trump towers were not bugged and that Robert Mueller's report doesn't exist and we can't read it,
Yeah, right.
And it's just so funny.
That Christopher Steele has been discredited.
Yeah, and the dossier, all of that.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is the amount of gaslighting is just ridiculous. I mean, they could literally just throw fire on the gaslighting and it would just go up in smoke because it is just utterly. And you know what? The other thing too, Jennifer. Again, we're speaking to Jennifer Oliver O'Connell, investigative journalist, contributor to Red State. They must think we are really stupid. And you know what? There is a contingency of the American people, unfortunately, that are just absolutely flat out bat crazy stupid.
That's true, sadly.
That came from the mouth of a Baptist preacher. Actually, I was keeping it clean for radio, but anyway. So what's interesting to me is, and I think you texted me this morning, is they must be really, either the internal polling is showing them something totally different, or or they are deathly afraid of an impending Trump second presidency.
And not only deathly afraid of it, but everybody keeps saying, including them, it's going to be close. It's going to be close. It's not as close as they are making it out to be. And that we may very well see, I saw the Reagan movie last weekend, another Reagan-type victory, his second victory, a landslide where he got everything but one state, Minnesota.
Yeah. and he only lost it by 3,000 votes, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, he only lost it by 3,000, and that's because Mondale, of course, was from Minnesota.
The native son. Yeah.
Exactly. Talking about the left panicking, one of your colleagues at Red State wrote this and dropped it today. Nick Arama. New Michigan poll and latest Nate Silver forecast are going to cause Dems to melt down. And he says this, he says, when the 2020 campaign began for the Democrats, Kamala Harris was thought to be one of the candidates that people might gravitate to, but then she began talking, and the more people saw her and heard from her, the more they didn't like her. Then, of course, we know Tulsi Gabbard took her down in that infamous debate. But here, Nick Arama puts out this Trafalgar poll, which shows Trump leading in Michigan as of right now by 1.2%, 44.7 to 43.5 with likely voters. And so that's got to give the Democrats a little bit of heartburn. And when Nate Silver is on board with the same thing, that's a problem, isn't it?
It is, because Nate is like their holy grail, except when he doesn't agree with them. But, yeah, Nate has been right a lot of times. I mean, he's the one who predicted the Obama landslide in 2012, and that's how he came to prominence and fame. But really, what that reflects is that she's not, if she does not win, and even if she does win but doesn't do well, that she's not necessarily going to carry everybody down ballot. Let's take Michigan. Lisa Slotkin is in trouble.
Yeah.
She's kind of within the margin of error with Mike Rogers, a known commodity already and a Republican. He served before. Slotkin has gotten some personal stuff going on about lying about her farm and the size of her farm and the fact that she's getting government subsidy for it. And she's got land, but it's not necessarily a farm. Nothing gets produced from it.
Sure.
Among other things. So their candidates are also being exposed as, like Tim Walz, lies and fraud. And normally a presidential candidate might carry them through or allow that to be glossed over. But the increased scrutiny and Kamala running away from the press is frankly putting a more glaring spotlight down ticket.
You mean when she puts earbuds in her ears and walks right past them?
Yes, and pretend she's on the phone. I mean, what Dave Marcus, Blue Box Dave, I follow him on Twitter, wonderful journalist, and he basically said, "What's the point of her having a press pool? Why are they there?
Yeah,
they could be doing other things."
Talking about the press pool and interviewing, I'm assuming you saw the joint interview with Dana Bash last week.
I did, yes.
And your overwhelming / underwhelming thoughts?
Disaster, for lack of a stronger word or a word that's allowable.
The first thing I noticed, Jennifer, before I let you go on about that, is I noticed that somebody must have been trying to sabotage Kamala because they put Tim Walz on that power chair, and he looked tall and he looked kind of manly, even though technically he's not because he's a liberal. But then they have Kamala looking like a dinky individual, just barely coming out of a Jack-in-the-Box. Did it look weird to you, the placement of Tim Walz up front and center, sitting on a high chair, and Kamala kind of shrunken down? Did it not look like that to you?
Yes, it did. It's I mean, first of all, the optics of her having her first sit-down interview with her vice president doesn't look good. I don't care how much, the press was trying to run interference. Vice presidential candidates always meet with their presidential candidates. Not for her very first interview. She hasn't given any interview since she was selected. And then you show up with your, as Megan Kelly so greatly put it, your emotional support governor. I mean, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's like your security blanket,
governor,
right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like a security, but I mean, he didn't do much to secure anything. He didn't even run any good interference, and he came off stupid looking, as far as I'm concerned. It really was a disaster, from the staging to the really fake bad questions. I mean, CNN should have hired some of us people who have lived in California and know exactly what her rise was to counter some of those ridiculous questions.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, that's a flat-out lie. Yeah, that's a flat-out lie. And there's videotape to prove this.
I think the most
and so Dana Bash looked bad as well.
You're right. One of the things that was most discouraging to me, Jennifer, was the fact that Dana would ask what would be a reasonable question about previous policy positions that Kamala has taken, ask a question about it, she would then ramble and give a word salad, and then there would be no pushback from Dana.
Absolutely no follow-up. And the one time she did do follow-up, the two times she did follow-up, the first time was about Trump's comments about whether she is black or not. And she just refused. If as a black person, if I am of mixed heritage, and I can claim 1/16 Native American, so I can say, more than Elizabeth Warren, so I can claim that heritage.
Okay.
But I'm full-throatedly going to say, this is how I'm black, and you talk about your family, and she's got a rich heritage. Why not mention that? Yeah. And I mean, fine, you can say Trump and his usual tactics, but why aren't you willing to talk about that heritage that you're supposedly proud of?
Yeah. Talking to Jennifer Oliver O'Connell, investigative journalist and, of course, contributor with Red State, 1819 News, and again, encourage you to visit and join her Substack, As the Girl Turns. I want to tee up the next segment. We're at the bottom of the hour here, Jennifer. I know we're having such fun, but I wanted to tee up the next topic after the break and kind of talk about California politics. Jennifer Van Laar, friend of yours and mine, put out an exclusive on California Democratic candidate Kip Mueller, whose claims he's a former prosecutor, but records just don't back that up. So obviously Kip is running just to the north of me here and against, Suzette Valadares is trying to maintain that seat, which has been Republican held now for quite a while. Yeah. And so want to talk a little bit about that Red State article, and also our radio station here, KHTS, and Carl Goldman is writing an editorial about it as well. So we'll talk to Jennifer about that right after the break. Thanks for joining us today on Politics in the Pulpit. We'll be back in just a few minutes on your hometown station. All right, we're back here on Politics and the Pulpit on your hometown station, AM 1220 and 98.1 FM. This is your holy host, the Bishop of Santa Clarita, Pastor Jerry Cook, back for another opportunity to talk about the two things that nobody's supposed to talk about in public: religion and politics. We're talking to Jennifer Oliver O'Connell, investigative journalist, contributor with Red State, 1819 News, and again, join her Substack, As the Girl Turns. And she's also a yoga enthusiast. You like getting yourself in pretzels, don't you?
Not quite. I love to just have a back that's not bothersome. And also, your spine is hugely important to so much else of your health. So keeping my spine lengthened and feeling good. That's the main goal.
You'll have to teach me yoga if you ever come out to California, before I ever get out to Alabama. So
I would love to.
I would love to see that on video, too. That'd be a lot of fun. I want to talk about a Red State article that just was dropped today, actually. Yesterday, by your colleague Jennifer Van Laar. And it's about politicians just kind of reinventing themselves or just making up things about themselves, kind of like Tim Walz and the whole stolen valor story.
Yeah.
Kip Muller is running in California, and he is trying to take a seat that has been held by Republicans now for a great many years, and Suzette Valladares is the Republican that's trying to maintain that seat. But this is Kip's second time that I'm aware of running for this particular seat. And he has made some claims that evidently are not true. He has basically said in his articles and in his editorials, as well as his TV promotions, that he is a federal and state prosecutor. And Van Laar uncovers a stream of untruths stated in numerous columns written by Kip about his employment as a federal and state prosecutor. What are your thoughts about politicians on both sides, frankly, Jennifer, who just have to make things up about themselves in order to look more appealing to the electorate?
Well, as a person who has tried her best, and I can write, so I could do lots of things to embellish and polish things, but I do my best not to be who I'm not.
In other words,
you
in other words, you don't want to lie.
Right. I don't want to lie, and or like I said, even embellish what I do. I'm very careful of not doing that. If I'm putting the title investigative in front of my name, then I have a record of investigations, that may not be big, but that peg me as that, because I've been, people have come at me with that, and I've been able to speak back at that. But do you not, that makes me angry, but also the fact that there are people who are accomplished, like Suzette Valladares, and skilled at what they do, and they get absolutely no opportunity to get ahead in politics. To this current Democrat vice president is a prime example of it.
Yeah,
was guided and glided along the rails of politics, and got in with the right people, and got promoted to the vice presidency.
Yeah. And
yet she has absolutely no discernible skills that make her equipped to do what she's doing. And so it's the same with this candidate. It's unconscionable that, especially since people saying you've done certain things in terms of case law and being able to prosecute cases and all that stuff, there's records of that, public court documents that anybody can dig up and see whether you actually were involved in this. So the fact that he, out of whole cloth, invented this entire life, it's just gobsmacking, but it's also indicative of a California press that just does not care. They just yawn at stuff like this, especially when it's on one side.
Well, I can tell you that KHTS, where I'm broadcasting from, has reached out to the Kip Muller campaign to respond to 4 questions. And I just want to quickly go through them real quick, Jennifer. Number one, the questions that we would like responded to are, number one, what federal and California cases did you personally prosecute in a courtroom? That would be good, right? Would like to know if you've personally prosecuted in a courtroom. Number 2, can you provide the case name and court number of the PC 288 sex crimes you referred to in an article published by the Santa Clarita Signal newspaper, which of course is a local newspaper here in Santa Clarita. Number 3, what is your response to the allegations made by reporter Jennifer Van Laar in her Red State article? And of course, you've probably read it. I've read it. And there's some pretty pretty heavy stuff that Van Laar found out. And then,
Yeah.
and then fourthly, during the 2020 campaign, you advocated to defund the police. Now you want criminals to be accountable. That's how he's promoting it on his articles. Do you still want to defund the police? If not, what has changed your mind? And so KHTS has asked for a response. He has until 3 o'clock, which is about 20 minutes from now. Something tells me we're trying not to hold our breath.
Yeah, probably a good idea. Save your breath and just be surprised and amazed if that's the case. And also, maybe break something, because seriously, that would be amazing if he did respond. But he probably will not. Until they are caught in this, they pay little attention to it, or they gloss it over, or they just assume it will get no legs, it will get no traction.
Yeah.
Then when it starts getting legs and traction, then they start, denying, obfuscating, or blaming, you're just coming against me because XYZ, like Tim Waltz and his stolen valor. You're disrespecting my 25 years of service. It's like, no, you are misrepresenting your 25 years of service.
Absolutely.
To go back to my earlier point, that is a huge accomplishment. 25 years in the military, in and of itself, is a huge accomplishment.
Sure.
Why do you have to lie about titles? Why do you have to lie about the fact that, because you were a coward, that you didn't go to Iraq, or shaded or misrepresented? Why?
Yeah.
I have no idea what Mueller's background is. Apparently, Jennifer Van Laar, our managing editor at Red State, she runs the place. She basically pointed out that he graduated law school in 2014. From Columbia University School of Law, was admitted to the bar in December 2014, which, pretty good. Most people fail the bar, like Kamala Harris, more than once. But he's claiming that he was part of the Obama Department of Justice, and Obama was in office up until, 2016, 2017?
Yeah.
So, possibility, but nobody has found any records. And Van Laar did a scrub, basically a reverse scrub of his LinkedIn account and some other records that if he scrubbed things, it kind of reverses it back and shows it. And basically, he was in an internship. That one case that he claimed he prosecuted, he was in an internship at the Santa Clarita DA's office during that time.
Yeah.
And then he did an externship at the Department of Justice. But in no way in an internship and an externship you can claim you're a prosecutor. When did you go to court? Would anybody trust you to go to court?
Yeah.
Not gonna happen. So those sketchy, just those details are just huge, because, again, why are you lying about this? If you were a paper pusher, which it's, kind of sounds like he was, then admit you're a paper pusher.
Let's talking about paper pusher / paper tiger. Let's move real quick to Congressman Adam Schiff. How about that?
Oh my God!
Yeah. So obviously we've got a Senate race here in California, as you know, and probably have already written about, between Steve Garvey, the renowned baseball player between the Dodgers and the Padres, respective careers, and then of course Adam Schiff, who I loathe. I pray for him, but I loathe the man politically.
Yeah,
and,
he's not a good human being.
And so there's an article here from the New York Post where it says Congressman Adam Schiff claims primary residence in Maryland. Sources say he is rarely in California. And a lot of politicians do this, Jennifer. And I know you know this, where they have multiple residences and they rarely live in the district that they represent. And and his district is, Burbank and that northern
West Hollywood. Yeah.
Exactly. It's that area. And Burbank's a nice city. It's a wonderful city. And there's some great homes up in the Verdugo Hills there that, he could probably purchase for a pretty penny, because he's probably got a bunch of pretty pennies to pinch. But the fact is, he he has a residence in Maryland and says he's rallying in California. Now, what do you say about these politicians, and why isn't mainstream journalism following up on these stories, and why do we have to read about them in Breitbart or the New York Post or Red State? Or is that because the alternative media, aka the right side of the media, is really where we're going to get this?
It is because, as I said earlier, in terms of Mr. Mueller, the California press, Gavin Newsom doing his last recall, not the one currently going on, called them the homegrown team. He was having a meltdown about, why they weren't covering him properly.
Yeah.
And he called them the homegrown team. And that's what they are. They are there to do interference for Democrats. And if it doesn't involve doing it, if it involves maligning a Republican or destroying a Republican, they're all on board. If it involves destroying a Democrat or exposing a Democrat, they're not on board. It's a yawn. They could care less.
Yeah.
So yeah, he should be investigated for these things. The fact that he doesn't bother to live in his district. He shouldn't even be allowed to run as senator, as far as I'm concerned.
No, I'd love for that to happen.
We are.
I'd love for that to happen. Real quickly, before we come to the end of this side of our show, I want to talk to you about whether or not the debate next week is actually going to happen. There's been some hemming and hawing from the Harris campaign about the rules and the regulations and what they want from the expectations of Trump's team and so on and so forth. Do you think she's trying to find an off-ramp here, or what are your thoughts about whether or not that debate will actually take place next week?
She is trying to find an excuse to either piss Trump off and get him to cancel, I believe. She's playing games.
Okay.
Because if she cancels, she will look bad. She already is all of these whiffs and whispers about the fact that she's avoiding the press, and that last interview with Dana Bash didn't make her look good.
Yeah.
Didn't make her look very transparent. So she needs to lay out policies. I mean, the fact that she sat up in New Hampshire and laid out a supposedly small business policy, which was total garbage.
Yeah.
I'm writing about that in an op-ed that's soon to be published somewhere. But she is trying to build credibility because people are saying we need to hear policies. And so if she does not debate, she looks like what everybody's accusing her of: an empty suit, a amorphous whiff of nothingness, Miss Word Salad. She'll look like that. So she's going to have to debate, and I think the debate will go on. They're trying to figure out how to engineer it, though, because she didn't win the mic argument, and so now she can't do her Mr. President, I'm speaking, or Mr. Trump, I'm speaking, whoever.
She did that with Pence. Yeah, she did that with Pence.
She did it with Pence, and she did it when she was like in one of her DNC speeches or one of her campaign stops to make herself look, tough, I guess. I don't know.
So Jennifer Oliver O'Connell,
she doesn't have that option.
If you had a chance to sit in the room with former President Trump and give him some advice for next week, what advice would Jennifer Oliver O'Connell give to former Donald J. Trump?
Let her ramble on as much as she wants and keep that beautiful smile on your face. He has a great smile. I would be smiling. I would be, smirking. Just be that calm person that really he was in Biden's debate. He did well in that and just let Biden go to town, and they exposed themselves. And Biden exposed themselves, and she will expose herself. There's only so much practice you can do.
Yeah.
But to actually off the cuff respond, or for him to respond with something that she doesn't know how to adequately respond to, it'll show up.
Well, you'll be watching it. I'll be watching it. If there's anything worth talking about, I'll text you that night. But Jennifer Oliver O'Connell, thank you so much for joining Politics and the Pulpit again. It's always a pleasure to hear from you, and we love your articles wherever they're dropped, whether they're on your Substack or 1819 News or Red State or wherever they might be. And we appreciate investigative journalists that actually investigate.
Thank you so much, Sherry. Appreciate you taking the time.
All right, we'll catch you next time, Jennifer. All right, when we come back here on Politics in the Pulpit, when we finish out the show, I want to ask you a question. Are you a talebearer? What is a talebearer? Find out as we come back here on your hometown station. All right, we are back for our final segment here on Politics in the Pulpit on your hometown station. It is only, 11 minutes to 3, and Kip Muller's team has not responded to any of the questions that KHTS has posed to him. So I'm assuming that they're cowards and they're not going to respond. Of course, that's usually what happens. Real quickly, before we get into Are You a Talebearer? A friend of mine, Senator Mike Morrell, who's retired, is running for California GOP chairman against Jessica Patterson, who, of course, has been chairperson now for 3 terms, if I'm not mistaken. I'll be actually hosting an event for him here pretty soon, the beginning of October. I'll let you know more about that when the details are finalized. But his goal is basically to strengthen the California GOP and has some criticism about Patterson. And my objective is to maybe get Mike on the show in the future along with Jessica and just have them hash out what their differences might be in terms of their perspective for California and the Republican Party going forward. Because obviously Mike is a Christian. He's a strong conservative. He's unashamed about voting for President Trump in 2016, 2020, and of course in 2024, Lord willing. And so, Lord willing, we'll be able to have Senator Mike Morrell running for California GOP chairman in a few weeks and let you know more details about that event once they are finalized. Quick question. Are you a talebearer? You say, what in the world is a talebearer? Well, it's exactly what the word suggests. It's a person who bears a tale. Proverbs chapter 11, verse 13 says this, a talebearer reveals secrets, but he that is of a faithful spirit conceals the matter. The question is this, Christian, do you have a spirit that conceals matters, or do you have a spirit that reveals matters, that you just cannot wait to say something to others about another person that may make that person look bad in their eyes? Do you simply parrot talking points about people, or do you seek out the subject in question to find out what is true and what is not true? Do you just repeat what someone says to you about somebody, or do you actually go to that person and say, hey, you know what? Instead of just repeating what I've heard, maybe I should go to the source and say, hey, what's up? Or how about this, Christian? Do you couch your talebearing with religious terminology like this? Quote, we really need to pray for so-and-so because, and then you start to expound on what so-and-so supposedly did or didn't do. Or maybe you go like this, have you heard what so-and-so did? I've really been praying for them. And of course, you say that at the very end after you threw them under the bus. Now here's the thing. I would expect such behavior from the pagans, but not the Christians, right? The next time someone comes to you and says, hey, have you heard about so-and-so? You should probably do your due diligence and ask them this question. Have you spoken to so-and-so? If they say no, then take it from the scriptures. You are dealing with a talebearer who does not exhibit a faithful spirit. They say, well, are you talking about yourself? I'm talking about anybody. I don't care if you're a Christian or a non-Christian, but specifically a Christian here, because Proverbs is speaking to Christians. But I think this principle holds true for everybody, that if you hear from somebody what so-and-so has done or hasn't done, would it not be an investigative journalistic thing for you to do to find out if in fact what they are saying is true by going to the source and asking the source, hey, I heard this, what's your take, what's your side, what's your story? And I have found it odd in my 22 years of ministry that Christians are just not really good at being investigative journalists. And I don't mean like going to school for that. I'm using the phrase investigative journalist a little bit tongue-in-cheek here by suggesting that you need to find out whether or not the story that you've heard from somebody is in fact so, especially if you have the ability to talk to the individual that is being talked about. And what's interesting is I have counseled with people for over 22 years of ministry, and I have told people many times, the repenting of a sin is not the problem. That's actually the easiest part. Repenting of your sin before God, getting things right with your spouse, getting things right with other folks that you might have wronged, that tends to be the easiest part of things. Where things get yucky is when you have the fallout. That is when people want to keep dragging things out for weeks and months and never really want to deal with the individual, but just keep spreading and spreading and spreading the story. And you know what happens to these stories sometimes. They don't evolve, they devolve. And they end up being something that's just not true. And so I think it's imperative that we as Christians in particular do our due diligence to not parrot talking points about people, but that we investigatively go to those people and ask them, hey, is this true, and what's your side of the story? I think that would be the Christian thing to do. In fact, in Matthew chapter 15, Jesus, talking about Christians in general in the context of the church, says, if a brother has offended you, then go to that individual alone. It's amazing how much of the scripture we just take our little penknife and cut out because those are things we just don't want to follow. But because we live in a culture where everybody wants to talk about everybody, even if they're friends, even if they're fellow conservatives, or even if they're fellow conservatives and fellow Christians, you just get wrapped up in the cultural moment by throwing somebody under the bus. And that is just not a good look for a Christian. Stop being a talebearer. Couple of quick shameless plugs here. This coming Sunday, September 8th, we've got a Trump parade that will begin assembling, sometime after 1 at the Bridgeport Elementary parking lot off of Newhall Ranch Parkway. And some of you have already been at the last couple, and we will continue to do one every other weekend leading up to the election. Also, next week we are going to be blessed to have, for heaven's sakes, Lucy Volotsky, who's running against Henry Stern. She will be joining the show, as well as Tim Traurig with the Guardians, as they have a huge event happening on September 14th, just a week from this Saturday, that I encourage you to be a part of. It's usually held at the parking lot of Higher Vision. Also, this coming Saturday in Castaic, for those of you in particular who are listening in Castaic, over at Lovin' Donuts on the Old Road, there will be a meet and greet for Dr. Akash Ahuja, who is running, of course, for Hart School Board against Linda Storley. So we want to get Dr. Akash elected. So that's this Saturday, September 7th, from 8:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. at Lovin' Donuts at 29461 The Old Road in Castaic. Encourage you to be there. We'll catch you next week, same bat time, same bat channel here on your hometown station. This is Pastor Cook saying thanks for listening in. Take care.